You have to understand this. First of all, that narrative has been completely hijacked. I'll get back to that later. But keep in mind, the toxicity that's been attached to Pete was never actually said. You can write as many articles as you want. You can tweet us as much as you want. You have to understand literally what was said and what was not. But I'll get back to that in a minute. For me, it's not about Pete Alonso, the person. I think Pete's a great guy. I think he's a little quirky, but I think he's affable. I think he's great with the kids. I think he's a great dude. Everything that I've said, and I'm going to say it again, is about Pete the player. So no matter how many articles come out, I'm not changing my mind. Mets need to trade Pete Alonso. They need to trade Pete Alonso. And the reason they need to trade Pete Alonso is a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't believe he's going to age well. I just don't. Number two, the high-priced contract for a right-handed fielding first baseman and righty hitter, that's a dinosaur move in Major League Baseball or approach. It's just no one's really doing that anymore. For a reason, by the way. Number three, as he fades physically, not precipitously, but as his powers chipped away and he's just not quite what he was, 32, 33, 34, as he is now, that's when I think if they get their pitching in order, the Mets should be in position to win a World Series or at least vie for one because they're nowhere near the Braves. I'm sorry. You could fool yourself and say, well, if the Mets do this and the Mets do that this offseason, they're catching the Braves. No, they're not. The Braves are twice as good, and everybody knows it, especially you, the Met fan. You just don't want to admit it, and I get that part too. You put up the fight. I've been there as a fan, understood, respect it. It's not about Pete, the person. You need to understand this. It's about Pete, the player. And the other thing, too, he's not box office. He's just not. I know that there's a lot of Alonso jerseys. I get it. Are you trying to tell me that percentage of Met fans at City to watch a bad team are more than percentage of Judge fans in the Bronx to watch a bad Yankee team? He just doesn't generate that sort of box office pop. I mean, the old adage is, certain starting pitchers, right? It's applied to Dwight Gooden more than anybody in my lifetime. Matt Harvey, a little bit for sure, but Doc was the king of I'm sure Seaver as well, but it was before my time. Doc was the man when it came to this. Mets are playing on a Tuesday. Doc's pitching 10, 12, 13,000 walk-ups, right? And I think Reggie had that impact on the Yankees. I think, a pre-exposed PEDs, Alex Rodriguez, had that impact on the Yankees. I don't think Pete Alonso has that impact on the Mets, which means the contract that he's looking for financially is not going to make sense. And from, an aging perspective, and really the Mets timeline as an organization is not going to make sense. It's not. I like Pete. I'm still trading Pete. 877-337-6666. BT and Sal on the Fan. Sal is off. And we are back together on Tuesday, and then it's full bore football season. No more vacations. Everybody's back ready to go. Listen, I understand. I do. I honestly do. I get it. I respect it. Yeah, I've been there. I have been there myself with certain players and certain teams. The venom, and I'm going to use the word venom, that you are pushing back with, many of you, not all of you, that is what makes you you. That is good. That is admirable. That is what being a fan is all about. You got a guy who, if he stays here, is going to be the first Met, unless, God forbid, something catastrophic happens injury-wise, but you can't factor that in because he's been a bull. The only time he gets hurt is when he gets hit. Then, of course, the Mets do nothing about it to get his back, but that's a different story for a different day. This guy is going to be your first, theoretically, your first position player drafted, developed, winding up in Cooperstown. Seaver's there, played for the Reds. Got his 300th win with the White Sox. And again, he's a pitcher, position player, Doc and Darryl, much respect. Just heard Darryl with Joe and Recco. But, God, you got to see Joe's outfit today. Check out my Twitter timeline, X, whatever the hell it's called. Got a picture of Joe up there. It's awesome. Yeah, orange socks. It's crazy. They're not going to the Hall of Fame. They're going to the Mets Hall with the retired numbers. They're not Cooperstown bound. They never will be, you know? Even if Keith ever got in, and that's debatable, he won the MVP in 1979 with the Cardinals. And I think he finished up with the Indians for a year or two. Yeah, he did after the Mets. The point is, you are territorial. You have your guy. You want to protect him. You want to keep him here. I get that. So please don't waste time going back and forth on that. I get that's a given. That's baked into the conversation. And respect. I am giving you that respect. I understand that. But the one thing that just doesn't hold a lot of weight with me, because I am emotionless here. I might sound emotional, but I'm emotionless pertaining to the subject because it's not my team. All right? That's not my guy. But I already know I'm going to get a lot of, well, you know, and Sal says this. Sal says this many times. He's on track to be the greatest Met position player of all time. Yes, but it's not like you have a long list of players that he's vying to hop over. And not to make it about the Yankees, but it's not, you know, I'm not even going to bring the Yankees into it. How about the St. Louis Cardinals? Just a random thing. He's not Stan Musial. He's not Albert Pujols, you know? All right, McGuire's a cheat, but and not Big Mac, not Ozzie Smith. You know, like, it's, this is going to sound like such a jerk thing to say, and I don't mean it this way. And if you don't believe me, I don't know what to tell you. But it's the Mets. It's the Mets. When you say, it's like saying so-and-so, you know, forget about Rodgers. He better be. So-and-so is going to be the best Jets quarterback that we've ever had. Hey! Fantastic. Woo! Take it away, Namath, obviously. So you tell me he's better than Brownie Nagel? Better than Kenny? Well, Kenny O was good. Better than Richard Todd, huh? You know, like, we can't forget about Boomer there. I mean, think about this, though. You know where I stand, or I hope you do. And if not, we'll flush through it. It's not personal. It's business. And for me, it's the wrong business move to sign Pete Alonso to an extension. I would trade him. 877-337-6666. Will's in Brooklyn, first up on the Fan. What's going on, Will? How are you today, buddy?
I'm great, even though I think your take is ridiculous.
Okay.
I think it's absurd to say they need to trade him.
Okay.
They could trade him.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If they can get a big haul for him, cool. But to say they need to trade him is ridiculous. You're talking about a guy. Power doesn't necessarily go away when you're 32 or 33.
It does if you're natural.
I
think he's natural.
Not power.
Pure
he's
power.
A big guy.
Come on.
He's gonna be able to hit. He's gonna be able to hit 40 home runs for 35 to 40 home runs for a while. But
Okay.
my thing is this: I don't care about him being our guy. If they needed to trade him because he didn't want to be here, or he basically was going to cost too much money, he's not going to cost a ridiculous amount of money. First baseman, power hitting first baseman, they don't cost that much. So it's not like you have to pay him $40 million a year. But I think you need good players. They need more good players. Don't trade away the one good player that you have, or one of the two good players that you have. It makes no sense.
Well, it does, though, if you want to win a World Series. But let me just back that up. Will, I'm not saying, thanks for the call, but I'm not saying that they can't win a World Series with Pete Alonso. Certainly would never say that. The guy's a preeminent power hitter in baseball. I've said that for a while now. What I'm looking at is the timeline of the Mets, and that matters. Listen, I was telling you, man, Brett Beatty, loved the kid swing, loved going to be a stud. Hit 212, looked completely overmatched at third base. Who knows if he's going to be good? I mean, I might have to take the L on that. Vientos stinks. He stinks. He's never going to be good here. So all these highly talented, and I really like Alvarez, but he's got, actually there is no but. He's tired, but he's flashed amazing power. I'm a huge Alvarez. I don't need to even, he's a stud. He's just, I think, a little bit worn down right now, you know? And we'll see about Mauricio. And I'll get to Mauricio and Dominguez later. But, I mean, all these highly touted prospects that, you know, you've been telling me about and we've been hearing about, really none of them look that good, except Alvarez. And I say that because when I use the word timeline, you need to know like what I'm piecing together. So it's not just this nebulous term, oh, he's throwing out timeline again. What I mean is by the time the Mets are ready to win, okay? And by the way, who's starting opening day next year? Who's in your rotation? You don't even know. And I don't know. So how could you tell me that team's going to win? You can't. Mets aren't going to be good next year. So if I'm right, and I believe that I will be, now all of a sudden you get into 30-31, Pete Alonso. And then, they take that, if the kids pop, you take another step the next year. Maybe you close the gap with Atlanta. And then all of a sudden, you look up, Pete's going to be 33-34. And he's going to be slow. And he's going to be average at first base. And that's going to be a problem. 877-337-6666. Joe's out in Rockaway. What's going on, Joe? You're on the Fan. How are you?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Joe.
So I think your take on this, are people going to draw to Aaron Judge or Pete Alonso, which is going to be a bigger draw? I'm sorry, but I go out to every Mets game because I want to see Alonso play. I want to wait for that home run that he's going to hit. Okay, maybe he doesn't have the average like Judge has.
Or Freeman or Matt Olson.
Come on, man.
What do you mean, come on? They're better. What do you mean, come on?
There's no comparison
I
with
agree.
Alonso and Judge.
Oh, forget about hold on. Joe, forget about Judge. Joe, forget Judge plays outfield. There are several first basemen right now who are a lot better than Pete Alonso. I just named two of them.
I disagree.
All right. Well,
I think Alonso is, and I don't think them getting rid of Alonso is going to make anything better. I think that them having Alonso because he's homegrown, and I know the emotional attachment and all that, but he's a guy that will instill the play in every player.
Well, then how come it's not happening? But how come
Joe?
How come it's not happening now? What do you mean, Joe? He'll instill the play in every player. The Mets look like they've been sleepwalking all season. I don't know what that means, Joe. I appreciate the call, though. And listen, I'm not dropping all this at Pete's doorstep. Pete's one of the few guys who's actually done his job. I get that. 877-337-6666. Let me give you something else I've gotten a lot, all right? Well, you talk about trading Pete Alonso. How's that work how did that work in the Seaver trade or any other big Major League Baseball trade? Generally, not well. You're right. Well, here's a notion. How about the Mets be smart and actually make a good trade? Just because Doug Flynn couldn't hit and Steve Henderson and the other two guys they got back in the Seaver trade did nothing doesn't mean that you can't get back a hole in Pete Alonso and actually identify talent that translates to the major leagues. Like, those are two very independent things. Just because the Mets and others, by the way, have made bad trades in the past doesn't mean you need to make another one now. And it doesn't mean that you will. How about Brock in Huntington? Brock is on the Fan, BT and Sal. What's happening, Brock? How are you?
BT, how's it going, man? I'm on the same page as you, man. I called before. I'm a baseball guy. I'm a Yankee fan, but I am totally just disagreement with this situation, And I think if you could hear me out, I understand what you're saying with Pete. His average. I think if Pete's healthy, he bats 250 and he mashes. And it's not 1998 anymore where there's a lot of guys who hit home runs like this.
Yeah, and by the way, I'll let you finish, but you're right. The down average this year, to be fair to Pete, is an outlier for him. He's usually better than this. Keep going.
No doubt about it, man. And I think a lot of this stuff you see sometimes with organizations when you get arbitration and they got to kind of talk bad about the player, kind of make a case to pay him less. And I see a lot of times you see that, with the media, they use the media almost to create these narratives where Pete's a problem, Pete's this. And it's almost like bringing that value down, try to get him in the idea where, he's not Judge. He's not going to get that money. But, I mean, if the idea and the point of baseball is to score runs,
Yeah.
Pete Alonso's not striking out 180 times a year. He smashes the ball like potatoes, dude. I'm telling you, he rips, man.
Well, Brock, Brock, I know. I watch him every night. What I'm saying is he's one-dimensional, and I don't think he's going to age well.
I agree with that. But
okay, so then you agree with me.
I agree. No, I agree that Pete Alonso is going to be one-dimensional. But I think if you're going to look at a championship caliber team and you're going to have meaningful at-bats and meaningful games, you're going to want guys like Pete Alonso coming to the plate.
I don't think Pete Alonso's clutch. I don't.
And one other thing I want to mention, when you're saying like the Mets are going to take this time to rebuild,
yeah.
At the time when you see a little more parity in baseball and teams turning it around quick, talking about the contract and the money, I mean, the owner of the team has a bajillion dollars. I mean, that's a non-issue. Sign your guy, dude. Pete Alonso mashes. Stop with this whole he's a bad guy.
Well, no, I'm not saying – whoa. I'm not saying that. I never said that once, Brock. That's where I got to make sure that this doesn't get hijacked right in front of my face. It got hijacked from Sal. And I genuinely felt bad for Sal. Sal never once said, you could go and check every tape and every Odyssey article that's written. Never once did my partner say Pete Alonso is toxic. Not once. And neither did I. And by the way, I looked this up. I Googled this, not that I was Googling myself, but I wanted to see, I figured something would pop up. And it did. I want to see when I first brought up the possibility of trading Pete Alonso, because I was the first one to do it, all right? July 28th is when the Odyssey article was written and the video was embedded. July 28th. Now, that wasn't about even remotely broaching clubhouse issues. That was something that I said a month before that, earlier. And this is not like, yeah, I was ahead of it. What a flex. No. I'm just trying to set up the chronology of how we've gotten to this point, which is being distorted largely by everybody. Listen, you can write as many articles as you want. I respect it. All right? I respect the journalism hustle. I truly do. I think it was Fox Sports, the main one I'm referencing from it, right, Pete? Fox? You could have many players, and this was out there yesterday as well, going to Steve Cohen, imploring him to sign Pete Alonso. That's good. Okay, that speaks to them respecting Pete. Now let's use common sense. When your star player gets drilled almost 20 times in a season, and it's not even September, and nobody does a damn thing about it, don't tell me how much you respect Pete Alonso. I don't want to hear it, because actions speak louder than words. So you let him get treated like a piñata, and now you're going to go knock on Uncle Stevie's door. Oh, make sure you give him the contract. We can't let Pete leave. Well, if you really want Pete to stay, if you really had Pete's back, how about doing something about it on the field? Now, that hasn't happened, though. Listen, I'm an actions guy. I'd say this to my kids. I sometimes trip over my own rule. I am so far from perfect, obviously, like all of us. But show me something. Don't tell me something. Do it. Don't tell me you're going to clean your room 7 times. I come back up, and there's 3 bats and sheets everywhere and a soccer ball and a uniform, ball. Clean the room, buddy. Don't tell me that you're going to clean your room and there's 37 dolls and gymnastics stuff. Clean your room, sweetie. We said we're going to do it. Show me. Don't tell me. So, again, and I'm not here to refute anybody's reporting. I don't do that. Because if they're able to glean something, I'm going to respect that. That's the essence of journalism, which is quite different from yellow journalism. This struck me as a very responsible article. That's not what I'm saying. But everybody's standing up for Big Pete. Stand up when you need him to stand up for him. That's when you stand up.